Imagine a planet covered entirely by a vast, thinking ocean, an alien intelligence so profound and unknowable it reaches into your deepest memories and brings them to life, literally. And in that setting, imagine confronting the ghost of someone you lost, someone you failed, someone who died because of your mistakes. Except this ghost is real, warm to the touch, and looks at you with eyes full of love and confusion. This is Solaris, and today we are diving into Stanisław Lem's masterpiece, a novel that will challenge everything you think you know about consciousness, memory, and what it means to be human. This video is part of our 2025 reading challenge, and I promise you will want to stay until the end to discover our next extraordinary book for August. Stanisław Lem was born in 1921 in Lwów, then part of Poland. Now it's called Lviv, and it's part of Ukraine. His life spans some of the most violent upheavals of the 20th century. 2 world wars, the Holocaust, shifting borders. Trained as a doctor, Lem ultimately became one of the most influential speculative writers of all time, though he often resisted the label science fiction. Lem's books have been translated into over 40 languages, with millions of copies sold worldwide. But he wasn't just a storyteller, he was a visionary thinker, anticipating developments like the internet, for example, artificial intelligence, and virtual reality decades before they entered mainstream discourse. He also wrote serious essays on cybernetics and futurology, establishing himself as one of the 20th century's great intellectuals. What truly set Lem apart was his philosophical depth. He was preoccupied with the limits of human knowledge, with what we can and cannot grasp about ourselves and the universe. Living through eras when certainties were shattered again and again, Lem's work carries a profound humility about the reach of human understanding. Solaris, written in 1961, represents science fiction at its most ambitious, using speculative settings not for escapism, but as a lens to examine the deepest human questions. You may know this story from Andrei Tarkovsky's meditative 1972 film or Steven Soderbergh's 2002 adaptation with George Clooney. Both capture aspects of Lem's vision, but the novel itself remains far more philosophically expansive. Today, Lem's questions are more urgent than ever. In a world of algorithmic identity, AI companions and digital reflections, his inquiry into memory, consciousness, and the unknowability of the other feels eerily prophetic. Let me take you to Solaris in detail, because this journey really matters. It's a distant planet orbiting a binary star system, covered entirely by a vast thinking ocean. This isn't water as we know it. It's a sentient being of unimaginable complexity, perhaps the most alien intelligence ever imagined in literature. The ocean spans the entire planet, a single consciousness that has been studied by humans for over a century. Scientists have been trying to understand this ocean for generations. They have cataloged its behavior, documented its strange formations, massive-like structures that rise and fall across its surface, geometric patterns that appear and disappear, mountain-like formations that the ocean creates and destroys seemingly at will. They have written volumes about it, created entire academic disciplines around its study, but they are no closer to understanding what it wants or thinks, or if it even has intentions as we understand them. Solaris follows psychologist Kris Kelvin, who travels to a space station orbiting the mysterious planet Solaris. Upon arriving at the station, Kelvin finds the place in disarray. The crew is reduced to 2 scientists, Dr. Snout and Dr. Sartorius, and both behave suspicion and paranoia. The 3rd crew member, Dr. Gibarian, has recently died by Kelvin receives no clear explanation from the others, only vague warnings and evasive answers. Soon Kelvin begins to experience strange phenomena himself. He awakens one day to find a woman in his room, a perfect replica of his late wife, Harry, who had died by suicide years earlier. She has no memory of her death and believes she is truly alive. Kelvin is horrified. Yet the replica is physically real and emotionally convincing. Kelvin learns that these manifestations, called visitors, are being created by the ocean. Somehow, it is drawing from the subconscious memories and traumas of the crew, producing human-like beings made of unknown matter. The visitors are not hallucinations. They are sentient, responsive, and biologically functional, though composed of something beyond human understanding. As Kelvin struggles with the return of Harry, he becomes torn between scientific detachment and emotional involvement. Though he knows she's not real in the conventional sense, she behaves exactly like the woman he once loved. Over time, Harry begins to develop a sense of self-awareness, eventually realizing that she's not the original. This awareness leads her into despair. Meanwhile, the other scientists deal with their own visitors. Snout's is never fully revealed, and Sartorius refuses to discuss his. The crew debates how to handle the situation, whether to study the visitors, destroy them, or attempt renewed contact with the ocean. Efforts to analyze the ocean's behavior remain inconclusive, and it never offers a clear response or explanation. Eventually, Harry chooses to cease existing, with the help of Sartorius using experimental technology that disrupts the ocean's creations. Her disappearance leaves Kelvin emotionally shattered, but also introspective. He begins to question whether humans are capable of understanding anything truly alien, or even themselves. In the final chapters, Kelvin remains on Solaris. Though his colleagues prepare to leave, he stays behind, wandering to the edge of the ocean. There, he contemplates the planet's mystery, hoping that one day the ocean might reach out in a way he can comprehend. The novel ends not with revelation, but with the quiet persistence of longing, memory, and uncertainty. And this topic brings us to one of Solaris' most unsettling and brilliant ideas: the visitors. These are not aliens in any traditional sense. They are physical manifestations of the crew's deepest, most painful memories, traumas given shape and breath. The ocean doesn't attack with lasers or weapons. It invades the psyche. It resurrects shame. The concept of visitors is the place where Lem departs from conventional science fiction. The challenge isn't extraterrestrial contact. It's internal confrontation. The visitors don't represent an alien threat. They represent intimacy. They're made from memory, yes, but also from self-deception, denial, and longing. They are the emotional residues we carry, now rendered inescapable. And they ask a terrifying question: what happens when your past shows up and won't leave? Kelvin is unable to treat Harry as an illusion because she thinks, feels, suffers. She becomes increasingly self-aware and increasingly tormented by the knowledge that she is not real. In that sense, she becomes more than just a memory, she becomes a mirror, a personification of everything Kelvin couldn't admit about himself and their failed relationship. Lem's philosophical insight is subtle but powerful. We all carry visitors, maybe not made of exotic matter, but still very real. Echoes of past pain that haunt our relationships, our decisions, our self-image. We rewrite our memories to cope, to survive. But what if those memories fought back? What if they demanded recognition? The visitors force the crew and us to confront a painful truth. You never truly escape the past. You carry it in your body, in your dreams, in your reflexes. And when it returns, it's never as you remember. It's stranger, more disturbing, and harder to define. But there is also something strangely tender in Lem's vision. The visitors don't lash out. They're not malevolent. They just are innocent in their existence, yet devastating in their implications. Harry isn't a villain. She's the consequence of Kelvin's emotional failure, and she suffers because of it. Lem's brilliance lies in how he reframes trauma, not as a wound to be treated, but as something we must live with, learn from, even love. The past isn't fixed. It revisits us, reshapes us, asks us to look again with more honesty, more humility. The ocean of Solaris doesn't punish. It reveals. And what it reveals is often the very thing we most want to avoid: our own unfinished grief. Maybe the ocean's intention was to show humans what really matters, and it gave the possibility to them to gain knowledge about themselves. Lem's most unsettling philosophical insight in Solaris is about knowledge, specifically its boundaries. The scientists don't fail to communicate with the ocean because they aren't smart enough. They fail because the ocean is not just unknown, it might be unknowable. It operates by principles and categories completely outside human understanding. The ocean becomes a symbol of epistemic opacity. For decades, the researchers on Solaris observe it, classify its phenomena, give names to its formations like mimoids, symmetriads, or asymmetriads. But these are just linguistic placeholders for what they fundamentally do not grasp. They generate data, but not insight. And this is Lem's core critique. The illusion that scientific rigor always leads to comprehension. The crew clings to their tools, their theories, their equations, but the ocean doesn't yield. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't communicate in any sense we recognize, beyond visitors, of course. It merely exists, vast and indifferent, mirroring their psyches without ever revealing its own. And this isn't just about the alien, it's about human epistemic arrogance. Lem forces us to ask, what if there are things we are not built to understand? Not because we lack information, but because we lack the cognitive architecture. Philosophers call this cognitive closure. The idea that some truths may be permanently closed off to us. Not hidden, just inaccessible. Think of it this way. A dog can hear frequencies we can't. A bat navigates space in ways we can't imagine. What if the universe contains not just other ways of sensing, but other ways of knowing, ways we don't even have the mental scaffolding to conceive? The tragedy of Solaris is that the scientists never accept that. They interpret the ocean's silence as hostility or failure, rather than as a demand for epistemic humility. They assume that every phenomenon must be reducible to human understanding, and when it's not, they collapse into denial, frustration, or madness. But Lem's vision isn't nihilistic. There's a strange hope in his refusal to domesticate the unknown. The world, whether it's an alien planet or the person sitting across from you, doesn't owe you transparency. Not everything can be known, not everything should be. The ethical response to mystery isn't control, it's respect. What if instead of conquering the unknown, we learned to live with it, just to let it be strange? To recognize that some kinds of not knowing are more honest than false certainty. In this way, Solaris is less about the limits of human consciousness and more about the boundaries of human knowledge and the dignity of accepting them. The ocean doesn't need to be decoded. It needs to be encountered with humility. Perhaps the most haunting question in Solaris isn't whether we can know the ocean. It's whether we can even recognize it as conscious. Lem's ocean doesn't communicate, doesn't respond in familiar patterns, doesn't behave as an intelligence should, and yet it manifests deeply personal replicas, probing the hidden corners of human memory with surgical precision. This suggests something deeply unsettling. The ocean knows, not in a human way, not through speech, logic, or behavior, but through a form of consciousness so unlike ours that we almost miss it entirely. Here Lem goes further than most science fiction. He doesn't just give us a mysterious alien, he gives us one so radically other that the category mind starts to wobble. Is the ocean sentient? Is it dreaming? Is it playing God? Or is it something else entirely? Some non-linear, non-individual form of awareness that makes our own consciousness look parochial by comparison. And this is the deep philosophical challenge. We assume consciousness must resemble ours to count as real. But what if it's not? What if Solaris is conscious but in a way that exceeds our frames of reference? without selfhood, without language, without intention as we know it. Lem is asking us to stretch the very concept of mind. The ocean might not be thinking about us, it might be thinking through us. Its visitors are not just observations, they are interactions, fusions of alien awareness and human emotion. They blur the line between inner and outer, between memory and reality. That's why confronting Harry is so devastating for Kelvin. She's not just a hallucination or a robot. She's a conscious being created by a different consciousness. She is a thought-made flesh, and she forces him to face an idea that goes beyond grief. The real terror of Solaris isn't invasion, it's reflection. It's the idea that the true alienness might not come with tentacles and warships, but in the form of a consciousness so vast and alien that it reflects our own minds back to us, distorted and raw. Lem's ocean isn't just a metaphor for the unknown, it's a mirror for our own illusions, about knowledge, identity, about what it means to be conscious at all. And if we can't even recognize the mind of another, what hope do we have of fully knowing ourselves? So at the core, Solaris isn't about aliens, it's about how alien we are to ourselves, and how confronting that strangeness might be the beginning of real understanding. The ocean acts as a mirror, but not a flattering one. It reflects our grief, guilt, and longing. It doesn't console or judge. It simply shows us who we are beneath the stories we tell ourselves. Kelvin's journey isn't about solving a mystery. It's about learning to live with one. He doesn't find answers, he finds an acceptance of not knowing. And in that space, a deeper kind of peace becomes possible. Maybe that's Lem's final gift. Not certainty, but serenity. Not mastery, but humility. Not the end of mystery, but the courage to live with it. Great reading challenge. Next month, in August, we will be reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez' 100 Years of Solitude. If Solaris explored memory and the limits of knowing, Marquez will take us on a journey through time, myth, and the cycles of human history. And of course now a little teaser for September. We'll be reading a novel by an American author who gave us one of the most intimate portrayals of mental illness in literature. It's narrated by a young woman struggling with depression, trapped under something transparent but suffocating. The author drew from her own experience, and the book has become a modern classic of psychological insight. Try to guess the title. And if today's exploration resonated with you, you might enjoy my recent video on the philosophy of digital privacy. In it we explore how tech companies see us, not as mysterious beings like Lem's characters, but as data profiles to predict and manipulate. And if you are enjoying these philosophical reading journeys and other philosophical content, consider subscribing and joining our community of curious minds. Thank you for watching to the end. I hope I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.